John chapter 18. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus to Caiaphas, to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat Passover. So Pilate came to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "That didn't answer my question." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for charge against him. But is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover? Do you want me to release this king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part of an uprising. This is the word of the Lord. I want you to think about how you understand that phrase, and maybe start with how you've heard it, how you've seen it understood, how you think when people put on their clothing, "not of this world," what they mean. And think about perhaps what Jesus meant by the phrase, "I am not of this world." What do you think that means? What do you think it means when Jesus said it? Take away all the cultural baggage of that phrase and think, what do you think Jesus meant when he said, "My kingdom is not of this world"? Think about the kingdoms all around him. Think about the kingdoms in this world and how, at some level, parts of this story feel very familiar. Someone who's assumed to be guilty because they're brought before a judge. People of a religious community bending the levers of politics to get what they want from it. The division, the anger. This is a clash of there's something about this story that feels cosmic. It feels bigger than what Pilate would think of as just a Friday morning. That in this moment is the kingdoms coming together to a head. This is everything that Jesus has been doing, and all those who are opposed to what Jesus is doing have led to this moment of Jesus standing before Pilate. And it begins with a bit of irony. Here's these religious leaders. They are about to kill God made flesh, conspiring to see him killed. But if they go inside Pilate's little outpost, they'll become defiled. This is Gentile territory. Gentile food, they'll be ritually unclean and they want to eat Passover. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, we want to kill Jesus. On the others, we also want to have Passover dinner together with our families. And so they come together and conspire to kill Jesus. And one of the things that Jesus said often, one of the things, in quoting the prophets and the prophetic tradition, he would say to them, "Your lips seek to honor me, but your heart is far from me." That you say the right things, you want to be seen in a particular way, but what your heart actually wants, you don't want God. You want something else. He would say, you wash the outside of the cup. The inside is full of death and decay. You're only worried about the outside, your perception. You're not worried about the inside. You obsess over tithing herbs, and yet you rob people, you steal and dishonor God. Don't forsake those little things, but focus on the big things. And have to be, if I'm gonna read this scripture in a way that doesn't make me feel self-satisfied and like I'm one of the good ones, I have to confess that the sins that I think are really, really bad are other people's sins. And the sins that I think aren't really a big deal to God, well, those I call my habits. So as we come into this passage, I want to approach it as someone that wants to be scrutinized by Jesus. I want this moment to speak and lay bare. I want to know whatever Jesus means by the truth. I want to know that truth. I want to see that truth. So they come before Pilate, but they won't come inside. So what they do is they find somebody and say, go get Pilate. We need to talk to him right now. Now, from what you know about Pilate, he's a governor. He's somebody that Caesar knew by name, somebody that would have met Caesar, that has ambitions to maybe move north to Rome where the action is. Do you think he likes to be summoned by the people he's overseeing? Do you think he likes to be fetched? Especially by the people that have been nothing but trouble for him. Caesar appointed him to this region. If you can picture where Israel is on a map, I'm now realizing that would be a great image behind me, but I'll invite you to use your mind. You've got, North Africa here. You've got this little corridor, Palestine, and then you've got, if you go north and east, you're heading into the Far East, and if you go north, you're into the Roman Empire. This little bottleneck was essential to the flow of trade. So you have coming from the south corn and wheat that goes to be sold all over the empire or through Roman roads into the Far East. Guess what you get to do when you control that territory? You get to do something. Do you guys know what a tariff is? You get to charge tariffs to those going through there. You get to say, in order to sell these goods in Rome, or in order to transport those goods through Rome into the Far East, you have to pay us to maintain the roads and maintain order. So it's financial incentivized. They pay those tariffs. They go and they sell it. Now, what they're selling is predominantly what feeds the Empire of Rome. The corn, the wheat, that is essential to the economy. Guess what happens if you don't have that free flow? You have scarcity. What happens when you have scarcity? Goods become more expensive. What happens when goods become more expensive? You get inflation. And so what Caesar says to Pilate is, you've got one job, bro. This is my version of it. Your job is to maintain the profit and the food supply. Collect those tariffs, collect those taxes, tax the region, make sure that those who are doing business can do business that is safe. I don't want this problematic group there and their weird rituals and practices to interfere with the economy, the flow of trade, and the peace of Rome. So you, sir, are tasked with keep those roads open. So he was made governor in AD 25. So right when he goes in there, when Pilate went into Jerusalem to kind of introduce himself, allow me to introduce myself, they would come in with standards. This is something that the army would bear. And on top of this standard, which is just like a pole that's like 5 feet high, they put on the top a little bust of Caesar. So they would walk in, and it's just a way of saying we represent Caesar, and by representing Caesar, we represent his authority. Now, when other governors had come into Jerusalem, they recognized that this group of people, because of their religious beliefs, saw Caesar's little head as an idol because Caesar claimed to be God. And they said, there are to be no idols within the walls of our city. And politics is about compromise. So the previous governors have said, fine, we'll take those off the top. Pilate had seen that, and he was let's just say, he erred on the side of showing strength. So when he went in there, he said, I'm not taking those things off. This man right here is in charge of your little temple here. So we're going to bring it into the walls of Jerusalem. Now, there's this group of Jewish men that knew if we come in with violence, if we come in and start a riot, then that's going to end up getting a bunch of people killed. Let's do an act of nonviolent resistance. Let's just follow him around until he hears our cry. So he goes back home on the Mediterranean Sea. I think his palace is in a place called Caesarea Philippi, and they just follow him. They're walking with the army. Here comes these Orthodox Jewish men following him. He goes to his palace. They wait outside the gates. He comes out of the gates. They follow him again for 5 days. They're just a silent witness to this injustice that they see. Finally, he gets so frustrated with them, he says, meet me in such and such arena, one of those arenas where they have gladiator games. So they're in there. And Pilate comes out with a battalion of soldiers who immediately circle these men, pull out their swords, and they say, go home. We're in charge here. Go home, or we're going to kill you right here. And the men faced the soldiers, put their hands behind their back, and stuck out their necks, and basically said, go for it. And even Pilate wouldn't kill innocent men, wouldn't command his soldiers to do it. So he said, fine, we'll take it off the standard. But that he didn't like that. He didn't like that feeling of being outmatched. He didn't like trying to show strength and being shown as weak. So, a few years later, he's building an aqueduct. There's a real problem with that area is getting water to it. So he's going to build an aqueduct. There's a kind of a new innovation there, was the ability to get water from one place to another through an aqueduct system, but it's very expensive. And so he went in and said, you guys, you got to pay for this. This is water for your city. This will benefit you. This will help crops grow. This will help this place prosper, but you need to pay up. Couldn't extract enough from the people around there. But he knew there's a lot of money in the temple. And he knew that they had their sacred money, and he knew they had what they called Corban. When you go and you exchange money at the gates of the temple, that Jesus overturned, that's Roman money. That's taxable. And this is before the 401c3 existed. And so he goes up there, and he's like, that money's going to pay for the aqueduct. There was a riot. And this time, he's like, I'm not going to mess around this time. They're being violent. This is an opportunity. So he sent plainclothes Roman soldiers into the crowd, gave a sign, and they started stabbing people in the courtyard. People are dead. People are panicking, rioting. And of course, word gets up to Caesar. Caesar says to Pilate, your leash is this long. You've only shown to be a weak, ineffectual leader. You have not maintained control. You've been a problem to me. Every time I hear your name, I'm like, what is it this time? And now this group comes to Pilate on Passover, a time when these weird people celebrate their beliefs that God delivered the people of Israel out of slavery from an empire that looks an awful lot like Rome, that they're singing songs of rescuing and liberation, of coming back to the land, of having control of it again. These people are nothing but trouble. This is the worst week of the year. So he would every year have some crosses set up. And these crosses would be just outside of town. They'd be clearly visible. They were not inside the town because that would be a problem for people in their purity. So he puts it somewhere visible where everybody can see these crosses. And as they come for the pilgrimage, as by some estimates 1 million people come to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, they would have to see crosses and Roman soldiers everywhere, reminding them who is in control of this place. And now, in the early morning hours, he's woken up with what we call a little briefing. He's got spies in town. He's aware of what's going on in the area. They report to him whenever he's in town. If something's important, they'll go up to his palace and let him know about it and says, listen, last night in the early morning hours, we have word that they've arrested somebody, that all the leaders in the middle of the night have gathered together to accuse this man of something. We heard reports of a severe beating, of yelling, of him being dragged from court to court. Something's coming. You just need you to be aware of it because I know how tense you get on Passover. And so Pilate's like, now I got to deal with this. And then here they come with Jesus. Now, they bring him to Jesus, and it's tempting to think you've got this little religious kingdom over here, and you've got this political kingdom over here, and they're clashing. And what I want to say this morning is they're the same kingdom. They're playing the same game. By some reason, they don't think they make up the rules, but they're all playing the game. They all want something. Pilate, he wants to go back to bed and have nobody bother him. These men that bring Jesus to him, well, they want Jesus dead. The crowd, they want Barabbas. So at least Barabbas did something. He killed Roman soldiers. What has Jesus done? The disciples, what do they want? Honestly, they just want to make it through the next week. They know that Jesus has been arrested. If he's seen as a threat to the empire, the next question is going to be, and then who else was following this man? And they're going to have to spend the rest of their life in hiding. This is the kingdom of this world at work. The kingdom, the net that interconnects the ambitions of those who are trying to kill Jesus, the will of the people and the crowds, Pilate himself and his ambition. None of them are free to do what is right. None of them are free to do what they truly want to do. What's the first thing Pilate says to the crowd? I find no fault in this man. What do you want me to do with him? And so all around them is a world that we've built so that things are not the way they should be. How many of you think the world is not as it should be? How many of you thought this week, this is not the way the world is supposed to be? Division, greed, fear, anger, violence, division, anxiety, sadness, all the fruits of this world. That's what it produces. Jesus sees it for what it is. Jesus says, in the mess of this system, I've come to tell and speak and represent truth. Pilate's like, now I've heard everything. Truth? You think truth has anything to do with what's happening right now? I have not heard one true word yet. These men that brought you to me, I don't believe a word out of their mouth. You won't tell me and give me direct answers to your questions. Truth has nothing to do with what's going on right here. Here's my truth. You're a problem for me. I don't like problems. And then Pilate taps on his sword, says, this is my truth, Jesus. I have, which is what he'll say in the next confrontation with Jesus later on in the chapter. Don't you know I have the power of life and death over you? Do you think Pilate's in charge of this whole situation? If you ask Pilate, are you in charge? He would say, absolutely, I'm in charge. I have the authority of Caesar himself. But imagine Pilate on a therapist's couch. The therapist is like, Pilate, You seem really frustrated. What is it? And he would say, well, this work stuff, Oh, tell me more about that work stuff. Well, I've got Caesar. He's got me on a really short leash. I've got these men that are always trying to get their agenda through with me. They're always manipulating me. They have power. They've got the power of the people in their hands. They can make a lot of trouble with me. I'm constantly trying to appease them. I'm trying to get out of this place. So Thayer was like, that's interesting. So you don't like your boss, don't like your coworkers, and you seem trapped, stuck, your ambition. You're carrying this ambition. Pilate says, I don't want to give this group over here what they want. I think Jesus is innocent. And he thinks, you know what I'm going to do? This is my first rodeo. The only thing I really care about are the crowds. What do they want? What do the people want? So he does what we would now call a polling. He takes some polling data. He takes a crowd, and he says, help me out here. Do you want me to release this Jesus, your king? And this is how he figures it. He says, you know what? If they say, yes, release him, then I can stick it to those religious leaders, which I would just love to do, and say, sorry, I'm generous. I give gifts to my people, and they wanted Jesus. If they don't want him, then at least he knows there won't be a riot if you crucify him. Is Pilate in charge here? Absolutely not. Are the religious leaders in charge? I mean, they won. They got what they wanted. They played the game better than Pilate did. But there's no way they're in charge. They wanted to just kill him and be done with it. But they understand that will create a series of effects. Pilate will come after us then. We might end up on one of those crosses. The crowds, are they in charge? I mean, do they get what they want? What they really want? Do they get somebody that will lead them to the liberation that they seek in Barabbas? The disciples, they just want to get through the night. They're hiding. Is Jesus in charge? That's a harder question to answer, isn't it? Because we think, well, Jesus is always in charge. Does Jesus get what he wants here? Is anything happening? Something he would desire to happen? Is it playing out the way that would happen? But if you were to see him, if you were to imagine Jesus in that moment, Pilate deciding his fate, being brought there, the trial, being up all night praying, and he's brought before him. He is perfectly and completely at peace. If you think about him in the storm in the sea, with the tide swelling and the disciples panic and bailing out the boat, what was Jesus doing? He was asleep. Why was he asleep? Well, the same reason he's completely at peace right now. Because he knows that he's doing the will of the Father. He has surrendered to what's happening and given himself to us. Dallas Willard several times has said, if you could describe Jesus' presence with one word, it would be relaxed. And what you see here in this moment, Jesus totally and completely relaxed. He's not anxious. He's not deferring to Pilate, looking down. He's not trying to appease Pilate. He's not trying to bully and intimidate Pilate. He is simply, completely at rest. His heart rate is at a nice 53 beats per minute. His blood pressure is 110 over 60. Is that a good blood pressure? Okay, good. Okay, thanks, guys. Completely relaxed. You would look at him, and you would not know if he's looking at a sunset, eating dinner with friends. You would just say, in all the storm around him, there is a person truly at rest. How is Jesus at rest? Because his kingdom is not of this world. Nothing that is happening will he have anything to do with. He tells Pilate, if I was a king the way you're thinking of it, I wouldn't be here alone. I'd be here with soldiers. In fact, I could do things like call down fire out of heaven, command a legion of angels to come and to rescue me. I could get out of this situation anytime I wanted, but my kingdom is not of this world. It is about truth. Your truth is your ambition, your desire for great wealth, power, promotion. You're tied up in it. You're about not being controlled and manipulated, about forward advancement. You are so deeply entrenched in the way the world operates that you can't even imagine another way of being. And I'm here to embody that other way of being. Think about the stories you know about Jesus. Any story. You got times when crowds come, they gather around him, and he teaches them. And they sit silently, and they hang on every word. The disciples come and say, these guys are hungry. We should send them home. And Jesus says, or we could just feed them. And he feeds thousands of people. People come to him to be healed, interrupt him to be healed. And he does it until Jesus just kind of disappears. And the disciples find him like, people are looking for you. The crowds are looking for you. We've got some really important people looking for you. And Jesus says, I know. It's time to go. There are times when Jesus is walking with his disciples, telling them the plan for the day. And there's other times when he tells them, just take a boat across, I'll meet you over there. And they're like, does Jesus have a boat? How is he going to get over there? There are times when Jesus says goodnight to his disciples, tells them a bedtime parable, and then they fall asleep. And then they wake up, and they're like, where's Jesus? And there's this little panic of like, what if he just never comes back? But they always find him, and he's out there praying. There's a story when Jesus was a child, 12, to Jerusalem, goes into the temple, participates in the same festival, some festival, I don't remember which one it was. And then the friends and neighbors go home, his parents go home, and he stays behind for 3 days teaching everyone who will listen. And rabbis who've studied Scripture, memorized huge chunks of it, are just completely blown away what this child has to say about these passages. Then there's a time when Jesus goes in there, kicks tables over, makes a whip, drives out the money changers, confronts them, and says, you've turned my father's home into a den of robbers. How does Jesus always know exactly what to do? In every situation, in ways that if you just look at it through the lens of the kingdom of this world, make zero sense. But there's a logic to everything that he does. How can he face death with this deep peace in his house, in his heart? It's because his will is to do the will of the Father. And no other wills in that room will persuade him, move him, nudge him, even increase his heart rate by a beat, because he is so completely at peace. I know the temptation of Pilate, the temptation to use my power, privilege, wealth, whatever you want to use it, to my own advantage, to get my will in the way, to win the games. I know what it's like to be the religious leaders, to neatly divide the good people from the bad people, and to say, I'm one of the good ones. In fact, I might be one of the great ones. And I kind of know I'm one of the best ones, but that sounds a little arrogant, so I'll just be okay with greatness, to divide the world into good and evil. I know that temptation well. I know the temptation of the crowds. I know what it's like to join a chorus of voices wanting to see somebody killed. But more than anything, I know the temptation of the disciples to just hide, to pull away from it, to go somewhere where I know that I'm safe. But I'll tell you what I want to know. I want to know what Jesus has. I want to know what that peace feels like. The wisdom to know when to step in and when to pull away. To overturn some tables and when to walk away and not give your pearls before swine. I want to know what it is to have that peace in moments like that. Because if the world needs anything right now, it's people who look like Jesus, who know the truth, and who are unfazed at the way that the system of the world seems to prosper the wrong people. To know deep down that I'm surrendered to God, to the kingdom. Sometimes that leads me to do some confrontations. Sometimes it causes me to say, you know what? There's nothing that can be said that this can change anybody's mind. To know how to live well. To know the truth that Jesus talked about in the way that he talked about it, which was to know Jesus himself, to listen and to follow and to live like he did. So this Palm Sunday, let's come to the table together, that we might learn from Jesus how to live in the kingdom in the ways that he described it. Because the kingdom of heaven is near. There is a better way. It won't always be like it is right now. And that we can join the kingdom that come what may. We have the peace that Jesus had in the same way he did. Let's pray. Father, may we have the peace that Jesus had. And we confess there's only one way to do it. It's the way Jesus did it. It's through connection to you. Teach us what it means to follow you, to trust you, to trust in a kingdom that comes from some other place, because we're so tired of the kingdoms we inhabit every day. We long for a better way. Show us that way as we come to the table this morning. Amen.